Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. You can see there are quite a number of people who have now joined us online for this live event. My name is Memo Ingu. I'm going to talk to you about job hunting tips. What is critical is that session will be recorded. So if you want to replay this over and over again, you will be free to do that. But you're also free to send me questions via group chat, maybe at the end of the session. This is the first session in a series of sessions that we're going to have on job hunting and other tips in relation to looking for a job or any other topical issues that we might have. Our next topic will be on executive pay and what should happen, what is the correct procedure in terms of executive pay. Executive paid, that will be our next session. But for today, I want to focus on job hunting tips. Before I go into hints on preparing winning CVs and also talking about interviews, I wanted to just talk briefly about some of the realities that job hunters face when looking for a job. I know for a lot of you and for a lot of people, it's actually very frustrating to be looking for a job and in some instances you never get called for an interview. And when you don't get called for an interview, most people tend to give up. My advice is there are a number of factors that employers consider when they're looking at your CV. And I'll go through some of the hidden factors or unknown factors that employers might look at when they're looking at individuals who are applying for jobs. The first one is that you might not know, but employers most of the time are hesitant to hire people who have been retrenched or who are currently not working unless the candidates are extremely good and they have a proven track record known in the market. If in these circumstances, naturally it takes a longer time to get a job unless you're extremely good. But my advice is that don't give up. If you really present a very good CV, you should be able to be called for an interview. But what I do know is that in some instances, candidates tend to hide. If they are not employed, for example, they will hide that they are not employed, so they leave a gap. Or they put their last employer, for example, they will put period June 2013 to January 2014. That's where they end as the current employment status. Then the employer obviously will have questions in terms of what has been happening since the January, June, when he last worked. So it's always good to be able to indicate to the employer that you are currently not attached or not employed. It's not an offense to say that, rather than having the employer guess. So the employer, in most cases, instead of guessing, they will just choose to throw away your CV. And you are at a disadvantage if it happens like that. And if you got retrenched, it's also important to highlight that the company downsized and you were one of the people who were targeted. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you are targeted for retrenchment, you are a poor performer. It doesn't follow. But the companies restructure, and you might find that you'll be recruited in a department that is no longer relevant to the market for that particular organization. So those are some of the reasons that might occur. But in order to counter that effect, like I indicated, you need to make sure that the CV is exceptionally well and well written, and we'll talk about some of the things that we can include in your CV. The other point number 2 is that employers they are hesitant to hire graduates from certain universities because of perception they have about poor quality of graduates of such universities. Before you start your studies, check if the college or university is highly regarded by the employers. There's no point in you just going to start to get a degree. Universities are ranked the world over, and I'm sure you'd want to be in one of the best universities. And if your university is ranked the last out of 100, definitely it's a challenge for you to be able to get a job unless you know someone personally there. So it's important for recent graduates to be able to look at that and check if the college that they are enrolling for is well known, has got a good reputation, so that you don't have to struggle looking for a job. We already know what is happening in the market, even locally, where we find that some graduates are actually finding it very difficult to get basic jobs that they've been trained in, even in government. It's simply because of the institution that they have studied with. Another point number 3, is that employers are hesitant to hire people who have worked for unknown brands. or brands associated with corruption, poor performance, and those brands receiving too much negative media coverage. I know this is outside your control, but employers do consider that. I can tell you, for example, today I had a meeting with one employer who said, when I mentioned a certain organization, saying, do you hire someone from this particular organization? The employer said, no, don't get. And we have tried it before, where we just trying to test and experiment if really the employers look at that. And the 99% of the time, people who are working for organizations that are known to be very corrupt, that are known for negative publicity and all other sorts of bad things, they are not selected. Even if you send 6 CVs and you take 3 from those organizations, the employer will come back to you, or our client will come back to us and say, hey, can you send me 3 more CVs? I don't want this from these organizations. And from our side, there's basically nothing we can do. We can't go there and say, no, I know this person, so employ them. That's not our job. When employment agencies select CVs, that's point number 4, they always look for the best candidate because they will be competing with other agencies. Whether I know someone or I don't know someone, if a client says, I want an accountant, for example, and this accountant must be a CA with 3 years experience, that's the first thing that I look at. But if you are competing with someone who is a CA, already working somewhere in a very good brand, and you are working in an unknown brand, or you are working for an organization, even if you are a CA, you are working for an organization that is known for corruption and things like that, or organization that have closed, sometimes that can actually dent your personal brand as depicted on your CV. So for us, when we are selecting CVs, we look at all these things. Some people will send their CV and say, oh, why don't you just try me? I have got so much that I know. But when you then look at their CVs, sometimes you don't find anything to sell to the prospective employer. So when employers select people, it's totally outside the control of the employment agency. We have no power to tell the client what to do with certain CVs. What we can do is to recommend. And we've been banned in certain cases where we have recommended people and the people don't turn up for the interviews, for example. I had a scenario where I recommended someone for an interview, and when I called the person for an interview, they started telling me, I'm traveling to so and so, why can't they give me another month so that then I'll come for an interview? Do you think employers have got time to waste and wait for that? No, they don't have. If you lose your chance, you're out. But employers, again, they are willing to listen. If they say tomorrow we want to interview these people and one of them is not available, is out of the country or out of Harare, if the interviews are in Harare, or they can make it for one reason or another, most of the time they are willing to reschedule. But remember, rescheduling means more time for the people who are interviewing. If the employer has wasted 5 hours interviewing the other 3, and you are the 4th one who is not available, it means they are going to waste another 1 hour or so interviewing you again, and most employers are not willing to take that cost. And what is also crucial to note is that for every job advertised in the Zimbabwean situation, there are more than 780 applicants. Half of those do not meet the requirements, while half do meet some of the requirements. So because of the current unemployment levels, you'll find that if I advertise for an accountant, you'll find finance directors who are applying because they've been retained elsewhere or they've been out of employment for a very long time. So they're just throwing CVs. Okay? In the same category, you also find a clerk who has just started working also throwing their CV. You also find a recent graduate also throwing their CV. So chances of you winning in that particular case, or your chance of you winning are very slim. The other challenge that we also face is that poorly drafted CVs are ignored by recruitment consultants, especially those prepared in uppercase, those prepared in Excel and PowerPoint. I don't know how on earth one would prepare a CV in PowerPoint and expect anyone to take them seriously. That is not possible. And I also don't know how someone would prepare a CV in Excel and expect an employer to look at it. They are thrown away without even looking at it. Even us as employment agencies, we actually throw them away without even looking at the CVs. So the CVs, the standards that the CVs must be prepared in Word. Employers are also hesitant to hire candidates who demand huge salaries and other perks before they even contribute a single cent to the company. I don't know why candidates get this perception that I'm marketable and whatever. Employers are not interested in that. If you are going to demand a huge salary upfront, normally employers feel that you are hiding something. Why would you want all this money upfront? when you know, when you're capable and you're confident in your abilities. Yeah, so we find that people, if someone is earning 1,000, when they bargain, they want double that amount. Or when they want to join another employer, they want that double that amount. What we normally recommend is if you're earning 1,000 and the employer says, what is your expected salary? Go for 1.5, go for 1.6, not double what you're already earning. Unless really you're a genius and you've delivered where you're working and people are desperate to get you. In such circumstances, yes, you will be able to probably bargain for a higher salary. But remember, all employers are bleeding. All employers are cutting staff. All employers are retrenching. And even when you're applying for a job, there's no guarantee that where you're going to be safe. So there's no guarantee that you're going to be safe. So whenever you go to a new job, make sure you do your best to make sure that things are going perfectly well for you. And this happens by making sure that you prepare, you understand the employer that you are going into. And in some instances, you find that candidates go into a new employer, and they get completely shocked by the culture that they see there. Because from outside, all organizations are good, unless they've been battered in the press. But from outside, most of the organizations are very good. And if you look at many organizations, I've seen people say, yeah, I want to work for this organization. It's a brilliant organization. Look at the brand and everything. But go inside, you'll be shocked what you find inside that particular organization. And some people don't want you to even stay there any day longer. And these are all regrets. I'm sure there are many of you out there who have regretted joining certain organizations. And it all comes to your research. Before you join any employer, do your research. Then employers are also hesitant to hire candidates who have a period of unaccounted for in their CVs. I think I highlighted this point earlier on. Never leave a gap in your CV. If there's a gap, explain it before the employer starts, or the prospective employer starts speculating about that. Employers are also hesitant to hire candidates from the diaspora, especially those who cannot prove they were employed in their field of study. This is a fact. We have tried to help other people from the diaspora, but you find in their CVs they've done core, they've worked in an area which is their core area of expertise. In some instances, they've done manual work. In some cases, they've done really clerical work when they're supposed to be senior managers or engineers. In such cases, we find it very difficult to sell such CVs to prospective employers. And most of the time, they don't even want to entertain that. Taking note of these realities will help you in terms of how you look for a job. We are not saying these are the only realities that are there. There are many more other realities that you need to be aware of, but I don't have time to be able to cover them all today. We can look at that next time. Now I want to go to how you prepare a winning CV. I'll only touch key points. We don't have enough time to be able to go through everything. One thing that I find in most CVs is when you look at them, when you read them, they're basically generic job descriptions that have been copied from elsewhere. Okay? Prepare accounts, prepare monthly reports. And if I hire a finance manager, the assumption is every finance manager is capable of preparing financial reports. Let's be honest, that's the correct truth. And if you keep on putting such kind of things, especially for senior positions, chances of you getting called for an interview are zero. Why? Because most CVs are written in generic language. If you want to be noticed, you must actually, your CV must be a profile of what you have achieved in tangible terms. For example, employers want to know what you offer. Say this in tangible terms, results-based language, e.g., I helped the organization reduce costs from 30% of revenue to 23% of revenue within a period of 6 months. Who would not want to hire such kind of a person, such a genius? It can help the organization, especially in our current situation where organizations are failing to contain costs. And you can indicate that you have done that in 3, 4, 5 organizations. That's what employers are looking for. Stop putting things like I'm an ambitious young man who thinks outside the box. I'm a team player. This is all useless stuff. Don't put that on your CV. How do you know you're ambitious? How do you know you're a team player? Convert those qualities into results that you've achieved previously. Okay? Even if you're a recent graduate, if you're a team player, if you're an ambitious young man, during your years of study, you must have done something extremely well. And that is exactly what we want to know. What is it that you did when you were working for your particular organization? So I find if you look at most CVs, the first 3, 4 sentences, it's all about glorifying yourselves. And employers are not looking for people who glorify themselves, they are looking for people who deliver results. Is your CV written in the results language? 90% of the CVs that I looked at today for the 10% that we have are all written in generic language, which is basically a job description that has been copied from elsewhere. And in some instances, some people even fail to take out the names of the organization where the job description has been taken from. From someone else, they leave the name of that particular individual in. Any employer would say no, no to such a person who does not have good attention to detail. Your CV is about your track record, achieving results and the potential you have. Okay, we've talked about the results that you've achieved, but you must also show the employer what potential do you have. Okay, what is your potential? What are you capable of doing? If I look at potential, I can say, if I join the organization or if I get this person, this is what I will be able to do. This is based on your research. If you're a marketing manager, a sales manager, you can actually indicate that. I see from your financial reports, you're indicating that your market share is currently 20%. From my previous track record, I will be able to move that market share to 40%. Okay? Who would not want to hire such a brilliant individual? Even if you are not as good as that, the moment you put your CV in that kind of language, you'll be called for an interview. That one I can bet you'll be called for an interview. But if you are an ambitious, team-oriented individual, someone who thinks outside the box, everyone writes that on their CV. So what differentiates you from John, from Sam, from Ellen, from Selena, from Tim? What is the difference between the four of you? There's no difference. How do I tell if someone is team-oriented? By interviewing them. Interviews most of the time are faked. People fake. They present not their true self in an interview. It is actually a tragedy that organizations actually use interviews to make such critical decisions. The bottom line is, a good CV is a CV that is based on the results that you have achieved and the results that you can deliver to the prospective employer. And this only comes from understanding what the prospective employer requires by doing your research. Okay? I have heard people being asked in interviews, so what do you know about this organization? I know I only got called to an interview today. I'm not sure. I understand you are in this, and sometimes it's actually wrong. How do you expect such an employer to hire you if you can give such kind of an answer? Then in terms of your structure of the CV, only put things that are relevant. Sometimes it's important to customize your CV based on the job that you're applying for. A generic CV to all employers is not a good CV. Because all employers, the employers who advertise for jobs, have got different requirements. Surely your CV that you have sent to Chimuti and Company can be the same CV that you send to JM Mining Company. They can't be the same. The profiles are different. What is required by the different employers is different. So if you send a generic CV, you might find that your CV matches only 5% of the things that are highlighted. With the technology now, there are employment agencies and employers who have got the technology to be able to automatically match what you have put on your CV and what is in the job. And if there is no match, your CV is thrown away automatically by the machine. What more if I look at the CV myself? I'll also throw it away. So customize your CV so that the CV matches what the employer requires. Let me now go to some of the do's and don'ts in terms of preparing CVs that you need to be aware of. When you're writing your CV, please do it in Word like I indicated. CVs done in PowerPoint and Excel are a no-no. And I'm still, despite us posting on our Facebook and everywhere, that you must not write your CV in PowerPoint and Excel, we still get people writing their CVs in Excel and PowerPoint. And these we throw them away. Use the same font type when preparing your CV. You find sometimes New Roman, area rounded, Arabic in the same CV. And as recently as a few days ago, I also found another CV written entirely in capital letters. It's so difficult for anyone, whatever the font is used, for someone to be able to read your CV when it's all written in caps. So what do? We throw it away. If it's me, I don't even look at it. I throw it away, regardless of how good that CV is. If someone cannot pay attention to how they present their information, such important information, how good are they going to be to present financial reports for the organization, to present to shareholders, if they can't present a CV that they've prepared themselves, that they've prepared with things that are within their own control? So those are some of the things that we need to take care of. Bold headings must only use for titles. You find some of the CVs are bold throughout. Then you ask, is there any logic, or did this person even look at this CV before submitting? I can tell you point blank that 50% of the CVs that we receive deserve to be in the bin. Why? Because they don't meet the minimum standards for a proper CV for someone who is seriously looking for a job. The quality, the font, the structure. When I look at a CV, I need to be convinced that this is well presented. Okay? The other no that you must, the other don't that you need to take note of is that I see a lot of people are now putting photos on their CVs. As recent as a few days ago, I got a photo with the full body photo on a CV. If you put such kind of a photo on a CV, what is the purpose of putting a photo on a CV? For them to look at your height? For them to look at your face? Unless the employer specifically indicated that you must put your photo in, my recommendation is that, or my suggestion is that, leave the photo out. They will see you when they call you for an interview, unless they requested for the photo. Remember, people make judgments about people when they see photos. Assuming you are not very presentable, you are not very pretty or handsome, and here is a marketing manager or a brand manager, and you are looking terribly wrong in terms of your facial appearance, who would want to hire such kind of a person? Why don't you leave them to decide when you come for the interview, instead of leaving them to decide that when they are selected? That's a no-no. So please don't put your photo. Short CVs normally win. Not more than 3 pages for experienced people and 1 page for recent graduates. I've seen CVs that are as long as 15 pages. Unless you want what kind of a job? I can't even remember. I don't even remember any job that will require you to have 15 pages of a CV. Who has got the time to go through 16 pages of a CV or 15 pages of a CV? All that can be summarized in a few pages. Let's assume you are really loaded in terms of experience, and you want to impress this employer, and you want them to know that you have really had the experience. 4 pages maximum, not more than that. Okay? And do you know that even for a person with 15 years experience, a 1 page, I can get them a job. Depends if they write their CV in research language. If I'm a CEO, for example, and I'm writing my CV, and first sentence after putting all the personal details, I write, I am responsible for turning around such an organization. I am responsible for turning around such an organization within this period. Who would not want to hire me? Everyone is looking for a turnaround strategist at whatever level. That's exactly what should be on your CV. No, it's not really the amount of data that you put on the CV. If you are applying for a job via email, please include the job you are applying for in the subject line. We receive CVs that are just dumped. Someone writes you your email and they attach. And you know the computer is also very clever. So what normally happens is that CV naturally is thrown in the junk mail. Because the computer, even the computer is considering it as junk. So if your email is considered as junk, most of the time it's the way you've presented the subject of that particular email, the way you've presented the body of that particular email. Okay? So that is so crucial. One of the things that I have also noticed is that, I don't know, maybe when people are setting up their Gmail or Yahoo accounts, they use their nicknames. For example, one CV that I received is Miss Pretty at Gmail, okay, or Hardliner at Gmail. Sure, this is not a wrestling match or a beauty contest. You can't write your email. You can't have an email like that, where you've got a Hardliner and Miss Pretty as your email address. That does not look professional, and most people become very suspicious of an individual. They look at you as not a very serious individual. You might be very serious, but the way you present yourself. The last interview, a few points that I want to highlight. I also noticed that when people go for an interview, they don't prepare. You must research, prepare, and prepare, and prepare, and prepare. When you know your subject and you know the subject matter and the background to the organization that is interviewing you, you become even more confident. The lack of confidence is lack of knowledge. When you don't have the knowledge, you are less confident. People who are knowledgeable, even if you wake them up midnight, they will be able to talk to you about what they do because they're very confident about what they know. But if you don't know what you do, or you're not confident about that, you're also going to show that in front of the interviewing panel. The other important point to take note is that I see a lot of candidates talk too much when they are waiting to be interviewed. Please, you are at a premises that is not yours. We are trying to give an impression that you're a professional, but you are shouting at the top of your voice and laughing, waiting at reception. Talking about things, talking about politics, talking about soccer and everything, discussing as if you're in your own boardroom, as if you're at your own reception, as if you're in your own home. These are things that can put off employers. And I've said in other interviews where people say, that last person who is out there is just too talkative. I don't think we need someone like that. And you're out. It's simple as that. And people concur. The other important point to take note is that cell phones must be off. I don't know what happens. You know you're going for an interview. Why don't you even leave your phone in the car or somewhere else where it's safe? In the middle of the interview, when people are really asking very important questions, and someone if their phone's ringing, and unfortunately, when the phone is ringing, the ringtone is for parties and winky D ringtone and all the other stuff in the interview. And this is a senior manager being interviewed. Again, when answering questions, please focus on the tangible results like I've already highlighted. Don't waffle. Don't talk about yourself. Talk about what you have achieved. Okay? You are selling a product the product is you, and that product's performance can only be seen in what you have achieved. The product can only be seen in what you can deliver to the new employer. What promise? What is your value proposition to the employer, the new employer, to the prospective employer? Most of the people that I have interviewed, they have no value proposition. And some of the candidates are scared to death. Even senior people, you find them sweating. In this day and age, people go to an interview and start sweating, unless they've got a medical condition. Prepare in order for you to be able to be calm when you go into the interview. One other important point to take note is that please don't bring the subject to salary in the interview unless it has been brought by the interviewer. I know a lot of people at the end of the interview, do you have any questions? How much are you paying for this position? You're not selling tomatoes here. You are selling a very professional brand who is you. And when you're selling this professional brand who is you, you must know that there are questions that are a no-no that must never be asked in an interview. Unless the interviewer says, how much are you expecting? If you get that kind of a question, the best way to answer that question is to say, I know you've got your own pay structure, and currently I'm earning 1.5. I would move for something that is much better than that. Leave it there. The question must be in the court, in the ball must be in the interviewer's court, not yours. The interviewer will then have to say, okay, the person is earning 1.5. For us to be able to bring them in, I think we need to pay them 1.9, 1.2 and everything. And one thing that people don't normally realize is that it's always easy to bargain for a salary when an employer has offered you a job. You don't want a salary to be a criteria for taking you out of the rest, which is normally what happens. When we are selecting people for interviews, we say, okay, what are you currently earning? 800. What is your expected salary? 2,500. From 800 to 2,500. Any employer will say this person is daydreaming. What is the value that they are going to bring that warrants this difference between 800 and 2,500? Their CV is not even showing that. It's always good to agree. Let's say you've been offered the job, to then agree with the employer to say, okay, you have offered me this amount of money. I know it's not enough in terms of what I expected, but I'm willing, after 6 months, if we agree. That's a clever answer. The last thing that I want to say is, please ask intelligent questions when given an opportunity to do so by the employer. And these must be related to the business of that particular employer. We see, for example, I see that from your website that you've been downsizing, and you are actually currently in the process of downsizing. Why would you want to fill in this position in the middle of this kind of restructuring? Those are intelligent questions. I see that you've abandoned the Malawi market or Zambian market. You are now focusing on West Africa. Why change? Why the change in the focus or strategy? So those are the intelligent questions that we want you to ask in an interview. So these are basically the things that I wanted to share with you today. We'll be sharing many more in the coming weeks. We actually want to make this a weekly event. So if you've got any questions that you want, you can comment. This recording will be on YouTube, or alternatively, you can email me at mngui@ipcconsulting.com for any questions that you might have, or anything that you want us to discuss in the next session. I'll be able to cover that. Remember, this is our first session, and the more people we get, the more views we get, the more comments we get, the more we customize our presentation to suit exactly and answer your questions before you go for an interview. And these sessions are not limited to job hunting. They can be about any topical issues related to human resources or management that you want us to tackle. We'll be able to do that. These sessions, a maximum of 30 minutes. They can be shorter in some cases, as short as 15 minutes, so that we don't waste a lot of your time. Otherwise, thank you very much for paying attention to this broadcast. Thank you.